Hey folks, it's me, Brandon Collins, and I'm back with another one. This video has two interviews with cast members Jonathan Majors and Jurnee Smollett from Lovecraft Country. I asked them about their work on the show, which is the biggest thing since sliced bread. Be sure to check out the other interviews I have with the cast members of Lovecraft Country on the Media and Popcorn podcast, available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Amazon Music. Special thanks as always to Africa for the opportunity to participate in these roundtable interviews. Now here's my first interview with Jonathan Majors. Hi, Mr. Majors. Brandon Collins, Media and Popcorn podcast.
Mr. Majors, what the what? What's up, brother?
How you doing, man? First off, going back to the last Black Man in San Francisco, I had no idea you were this shredded, man, because you were wearing a lot of layers in that movie, and then you got your guns out and everything. I'm just, you're making me look bad in front of my wife. But I was curious. I was curious from your perspective, out of all the episodes that have been released to the public thus far, what was the script? Which one was the script that made you say, "Oh, they're gonna do that"?
My knee-jerk reaction is the first one. The pilot 101, kind of the homecoming episode, because that's when you get smacked in the face with everything. The opening is crazy. It's a homage and overture to what it is we're about to get into. So that in and of itself pulled me in. However, I would say that episode 6 that we all just saw, to me, seemed to be the most literary and the most quiet of the pieces. And that really drew me in. That might be my affinity for the work that kind of brought me into Last Black Man in San Francisco. The intimacy of that world that we played in Korea and with Jamie Chung. And that whole experience was quite different and quite beautiful. I actually was on a silent retreat in Hawaii, living in a cave. It was not glamorous at all, but I had to get out, and so I went and I lived in a cave, and I read that script, over and over and over, and did my work in that. And so that piece demanded a different part of Atticus. As I was saying, like that's the big transition, and hopefully the audience got to see Tick morph and change into Atticus in that moment. So I was really intrigued by that script when I just looked at it on the page.
Great, thank you.
No doubt, brother.
All right, and now here's my interview with Jurnee Smollett. Hi, Jurnee. Brandon Collins from the Media and Popcorn podcast. I've been a huge fan of you ever since The Great Debaters, so it's a pleasure to be able to talk to you. I was curious because for me, Letty is the most intriguing, interesting character on the show. But I want to know your thoughts on who the most intriguing character is in the Lovecraft story.
It's hard to say most for me because Letty can't exist without all the other characters. I'm responding to the situations, the men putting the cross on my lawn. I mean, it's like I'm responding to that, or I'm responding to the monsters or my sister or Atticus and this trauma bond that we have, this secret we're sharing, and how he's struggling to navigate it and I'm struggling to navigate it. Interestingly enough, for me with Letty, it's just, I drew a lot of inspiration from my grandmother in building the character. She, in the 1950s, I wanted to understand what was in the soil, what was in the roots that enabled women like Letty to exist. We come from resilient people, and oftentimes we're portrayed as the meek wife in narratives, or we're portrayed as the set dressing. We're no more important than the curtains in the narrative. And I know that's a fallacy. I know that's not true. We, as Black and being Black and female and having to navigate that duality in the 1950s, come on, like that's something that I want to explore. That's something that intrigues me, is how were you able to get up every day and go out into that world that was trying to erase you, that was trying to degrade you, that was trying to rob you of your dignity? How'd you do that? Like, because I know for me, sometimes as a Black female who lives at the intersection of multiple identities in 2020, is hard to walk outside the safety of my house and deal with what is out there. So how did my grandmother do that? How did Gwendolyn Brooks do that? How did Eartha Kitt do that? How did, Lorraine Hansberry? I mean, they're queens. You can only sum it up to that, but it's not just that. There are real characteristics that made these women be able to navigate that world. And so that's what I tried to pull from. I tried to draw upon that. And, being used as a vessel to tell these stories, it activates the blood memory. These stories are ancient. They're ancestral. This feeling of displacement that Letty suffers from, where she's searching, she's grasping for life. She buys a house because she just wants to plant some roots somewhere and stake her claim, right? I can relate to that. Growing up in, being like the only Black and Jewish family in all white neighborhoods, dealing with dead fish being put on my lawn the morning of the Million Man March. So, I mean, we know that great shock that James Baldwin talks about when you realize that this country that you owe your identity to hasn't evolved a place for you. We know that. That's what Letty's suffering from. They haven't evolved a space for me. So how do I go and take it? Even my own men won't let me drive because they think I'm just a girl. How do you navigate it? So those are just the questions I asked myself. But again, she can't exist without the world that she's struggling against. That's a long ass answer to your question.
Okay, though. Thank you.
Medium popcorn. We are two niggas spoiling movies. Yeah. Brandon Collins, that's me. And Justin Brown for your movie needs. Medium popcorn. Woo! You haven't seen it, well, we're gonna spoil it. Spoil it in your face. That's your warning. So if you get pissed, it's all your